Minglabar. I welcome you to UHF's Introduction to Whistleblowing in a Humanitarian Context. I would like to remind you that CPIs and UHF team have a zero tolerance to fraud and corruption within their programs. Part of UHF's and the donors' commitment to anti-fraud is to provide you with fraud awareness presentation. Please make yourself familiar with it. You will be happy to hear there will be no exams, but this training aims to give you important insights that you should be aware of within your work setting. First, some instructions. If you are viewing this presentation without a facilitator, at times I may ask you to stop and perform exercises or activities. Please use the pause and play buttons at any stage, and when I instruct you. If this training is facilitated, you can gesture to the facilitator and we can stop and discuss your question at the next appropriate time. First, some background. What or who is a whistleblower? A whistleblower is someone who alerts an organization or other authority of suspected incidences of fraud and corruption, unethical behavior, and illegal activities. A whistleblower system is a set of awareness programs and initiatives to encourage staff and other stakeholders to safely report actual or suspicious activities of fraud, corruption, or other illegal behaviors to the organization. It is made up of various communication channels such as emails, phones, or message services that allow people to be anonymous or as open as they want. It is also part of a wider organizational process that is able to assess, manage, and investigate the report in a confidential and professional manner. Whistleblowing differs from reporting a conflict of interest, which is covered in another training session. For your understanding, the UHF team follows CPI's counter-fraud approach as 4 strands of defense and action. You may find your organization has a similar approach. They are: 1. Deterrence. To discourage potential perpetrators from committing fraud and corruption. 2. Prevention. Reducing the likelihood and impact, severity, of fraud and corruption through limiting the opportunities for those who cannot be deterred. 3. Detection. The identification of suspicious activity that could be fraud and corruption. 4. Response. Acting on suspicion of fraud and corruption in a way that minimizes risk and maximizes the opportunity to improve resilience. This includes investigation, applying sanctions, and obtaining redress. Through CPI, UHF have on file various fraud and corruption reference materials. Please have a look at them. Also, you can always get this presentation in streaming format, as a PowerPoint, or print it out. One publication I recommend is The Report to the Nations, 2020 Global Study on Occupational Fraud and Abuse. This may sound like a boring publication, but it is full of informative graphs and quick insight. One thing it shows you simply is that fraud is everywhere, and companies worldwide need to form defenses against it happening. Please ask your facilitator if you would like to get access to any of these. We will use various resources to provide you with evidence-based information. Some will be written by fraud professionals within the humanitarian sector, such as Oliver May's book, Fighting Fraud and Corruption in the Humanitarian and Global Development Sector, and Transparency International's Preventing Corruption in Humanitarian Operations. But as mentioned, one very informative publication we will use a lot is the Report to the Nations. It is a regular survey report from the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, While not humanitarian specific, they have surveyed businesses worldwide annually since 1996 about actual fraud events and have come up with some unique information and statistics. These help to alert your understanding. It also helps programs like UHF and its partners to best focus and prioritize their resources. If you wish to explore fraud and corruption in more depth in the humanitarian context, you have some good, easy to understand information and trainings. Also look at the specific donor websites, especially the ones you are working with. Do you know what the specific donor rules are regarding fraud and corruption? The contract and guidelines place heavy reliance on INGOs for fraud reporting. So, why are you here? Why do I need to learn about whistleblowing? This crime went on for years. A social worker with supposable limited access to money. She stole 13 million British pounds. 17 million US dollars from the government. How didn't anyone working with her not hear, not see, or even speak about it? How many times have you seen headlines like this? Especially related to aid and development. A fraud so big. Someone must have seen it. Frauds just don't happen over days. They can occur over months, sometimes years. Like for example, someone who fakes invoices and has them paid to themselves. Have a look at this graph from the report to the nations. Basically it says, nearly 50% of frauds happen over a period of up to a year. That means about 50% of frauds are occurring over a year or more. Wouldn't you think that the people working with a fraudster would suspect anything? Now look at this. The longer a fraud goes for, the more money that is lost. There are various reasons for this. One example is that people start off small. They don't get caught, and then they get more confident and more greedy. Like a monster. And remember, the impact of fraud on INGO operations goes well beyond the costs. They result in poor reputation issues, poor donor relations, and legal and compliance issues. Alright, here is a quiz. Please look at the screen. Out of all these ways that organizations do discover fraud, what is number 1? Say it out loud to your neighbor, even if you are by yourself. Or type it into the online questions menu, on the Zoom, Google Meet or Microsoft Teams. Which one do you think it is? I will give you 20 seconds. So what is the answer? It is people who see and inform in one way or another. People just like you. Here is the list in an orderly fashion. From best detector of fraud to less. People giving tips, that is information via an email, a phone call or in another fashion, are on top at 43%. Most people think audits or document reviews are number one. Of course, the other methods are excellent ways of detecting fraud, especially when used in combination. They are even stronger in deterrence. But who are these people? 50% of people who detect and report fraud are employees. In the humanitarian sector and UHF's wider context, this could also include partners. In the humanitarian sector, who might be your customer? Your customer might be your donor, your beneficiaries, or even doctors and clinics. You can see that even vendors detect fraud and report it. An example might be when the vendor's competitors get more favorable terms through corrupt procurement processes. If there is a mechanism, they might report it. Understanding that many people make up a detection process provides the first hint of why a whistleblower program is an important mechanism for an organization to establish. A whistleblower program does not only include you. All staff members are included. There are also the partners, the vendors, including local shops and villages, and all the project and field staff. Many of them are spread far and wide in locations around the country. Donor institutions have their own networks and information sources. While it is sensitive for INGOs to receive advice of possible fraud, donors, especially ones in country, are also in receipt of wider knowledge regarding their program portfolios. How is sensitive information received from donors handled by your organization? Beneficiaries are potentially the largest group of all. They are the group that humanitarian organizations have the most accountability to. Unfortunately, beneficiaries are easily forgotten because INGOs are so focused on reporting to head offices and donors. How do your beneficiaries know the full services and assistance they are entitled to? Do they even know what they are signing for? Is it ethical that a middle person or service provider takes a commission, even if they arrange to collect the humanitarian supplies for the village? So many individuals and groups who can serve as a strong team against fraud. You have a whole army of people that, if well informed and given the right information, can support an organization's efforts in detecting and reporting fraud. Organizations and donors encourage or even make it mandatory for its employees and associates to report suspect fraud. But we all know that there can be a lot of pressure on people reporting fraud and corruption. And people committing the fraud will be particularly protective, and they may make you look bad. Will I lose my job? My supervisor will get angry at me. If I get it wrong, I will lose friends and future career options. Everyone will know. But I was only trying to do what is asked of me. For people to whistleblow, they need confidence that the management will treat their information confidentially and with respect. Whistleblower policies and procedures are an organization's statement of your rights and obligations, of how they will treat and protect you. You may not be from Community Partners International, but do you know if they have a whistleblower policy? If so, where would you find CPI's overarching whistleblower policy? Did you know they have a policy statement on their official website? Let's look for it. To find it, go to About Us, then Policies and Governance, then Whistleblower Policy. This is a high-level statement that is just as important to you as it is to people reading it from outside. In short, it outlines CPI's commitment to protecting people who are in good faith, are reporting suspect fraud. Shortly, I will ask you to pause the presentation and take 10 minutes to read the policy that appears on CPI's website. It is also in the handouts. 2.3 Whistleblower Website Policy, Community Partners International. After reading this policy, I want you to consider the question on the screen. What do you think is important to you, if you were an employee of CPI and you suspect fraud in your area? Again, what do you think is important to you, if you were an employee of CPI and you suspect fraud in your area? If you are with other people, please discuss it with them. See you when you get back. Please pause the player and push play to return. You have 10 minutes. Okay, let's just reflect on the statement. Paragraph 1. Listen to these extract statements. It is the responsibility of all directors, officers, and employees to report violations or suspected violations. An employee who retaliates against someone who has reported a violation in good faith is subject to discipline. Can you see that if an employee reports suspected fraud, they should be protected? Okay. Paragraph 2. Again, listen to these extract statements. CPI will not retaliate against any employee for filing a complaint, and will not knowingly permit retaliation by management, employees, or coworkers. Applicable law also prohibits retaliation against any employee, by another employee or by CPI for reporting, filing, testifying, assisting, or participating in any manner in any investigation, proceeding, or hearing conducted by CPI or a federal or state enforcement agency. It is a mouthful, but it is full of whistleblower protection commitment. And finally, paragraph 3. Listen to this extracted statement. Please understand that by reporting these types of incidents to CPI, employees are assisting CPI to prevent and correct behavior that is inappropriate for the workplace. Remember this graph? Now I hope you are getting the idea why we need a mechanism like the whistleblower program. And that the people, whoever they may be, need to be protected. Fraud and corruption can be a nasty business. Someone who is committing the crime will be aggressive, evasive, and sly so they can protect themselves. They do it in secret. Organizations realize this and they put processes in place. Look out for the more detailed whistleblower processes that are in CPI or your organization. And remember that a whistleblower program needs to be wider than just for employees. If you are in program management, finance, accounting, procurement, HR administration, IT, or similar roles, You must be able to assess if there are suitable whistleblower systems in place for the many stakeholders and areas you oversee. When you are working with partners, do they have a workable internal whistleblower systems? And do they know that suspect incidents of fraud should be reported to CPI? How do your beneficiaries report issues in their goods or service delivery? I won't go into depth of a whistleblowing reporting systems here. That is another lesson. But I hope you can see why it is necessary and that it is a key part of your organization's governance. But even now you are equipped to understand that people, i.e. employees and stakeholders, are a very important part of CPI's fraud detection system. Also, although you may not be familiar with the details of a fraud reporting system, you would understand if you walked into a project site, if people have enough information or not. Do your beneficiaries even know who is the organization that is supplying the goods or services? You may have heard me using the word suspect and not actual when referring to fraud. The problem is that fraudsters are always concealing their activities. They lie, they avoid people looking closely at their work, they rarely take holidays in case someone uncovers what they are up to. When you are busy working, it is hard to see an actual fraud happening. But then you will see something not right. You suspect something. Like this picture, the business seems straightforward. The paperwork is complete, people are looking like they are doing normal business. But under the table, money is changing hands. At this point you probably suspect something's going on. But you do not know what. You see things that don't look right. You start to suspect something is happening. But you are not responsible for this fraud. Although you suspect something, and you know your organization wants to be notified. You do not, and should not investigate this on your own. All you can do is inform your organization to the level you understand what is going on. And leave it with them. A whistleblower program is designed to receive information that you suspect is fraud and they confidentially examine it. The suspect events will be investigated in confidence. The organization should keep you updated. They may not tell you details, but they should let you know if it is ongoing or finished, and what was the outcome. And please keep it confidential, and do not discuss the matter with anyone other than the investigation team. This is because, if the person is innocent, then they should not have rumors about them. However, if a fraudster thinks they are under suspicion, they will destroy vital clues. The investigation team must work behind the scenes to gather evidence, and to work out what has really happened. The fraudster will rarely admit to anything other than what is discovered, and presented to them. If it has been going on for years, there can be big issues for the organization, and they must understand the extent of any problem. So during the investigation, just stay calm and pretend you never saw anything. It is the investigation team who will do the work. Okay, I have some quick questions for you to ponder before we conclude. When you hear the question, pause the presentation and think or discuss the possible answer. My question to you is, with so many requests and forms around the office, what would you do to make it easy for people to know who to contact if you suspected fraud? Think of 3 things. Hit pause, and when you have finished, push play. So, what did you think of? There could be more, but here are 3 things I thought of. 1. Ask your supervisor. 2. Read the employee manual. 3. Have the office put up posters with contact details. Do you think any of these are good? And why, or why not? My suggested answers are just some of the things you can do. UHF and its partners need to put messaging like this in various forms and locations, so employees and external people are informed and aware. Of course, there are many messages in the workplace and outside locations. The challenge is to balance these, but make it easy for people to find a solution. And think of this training session. It's also a way to raise your awareness. This is part of the UHF's team's commitment to mitigating fraud and corruption. And the important ingredient is you. We know as humanitarians, the places where our beneficiaries are in some of the most complex and challenging environments. Think of cyclones, conflict, or just poor remote villages. This is also where humanitarian organizations have the most challenges monitoring fraud. The beneficiaries are some of the ones who have the most to lose. Wouldn't you want to hear from them if something is wrong? Okay, I will present a different question, but very much a reality for humanitarian projects. It shows how INGOs need to think about the stakeholders and the type of counter-fraud detection needed in a particular humanitarian context. Places where vulnerable people have less access to information and resources. There is a lot to unpack here, but let's look at question 2 to get us thinking. The background is: your partners run a TB clinic. The patients should receive nutritional rations every week. The nurse receives money to buy the food. The patients never receive the food, and actually they do not know it is available. What would you do to set up a whistleblower hotline? So please think of some solutions and hit pause, and when you have finished, push play. Take as long as you want. Discuss it with your colleagues. See you when you get back. Okay, do you have some suggestions? Well, any good idea is worth considering. He is mine. In a clinic there may be many donors and numerous health messages. So your poster may not work, and the staff have no idea which INGO is paying for what. An idea might be in that the patient must sign the consultation form each week. Here, it could be written in Myanmar that you are entitled to these nutrition packs and other services every week. If you do not receive them, please call this number. However, a problem might be that the patient cannot read or does not own a phone. Or the rations change so much that the message goes out of date. Obviously, I do not have a set answer. It is up to the UHF team and the partners to analyze the situation to find an appropriate solution. Better still, a knowledge base will help. But it needs your input and experiences on the matter. And think about it. Hotlines and whistleblowing complement and enforce your financial and programmatic reviews. These are opportunities to hand out materials and create awareness. We have a lot to do in program and business management in INGOs, so think how your whistleblower and counter-fraud activities can be better integrated for effectiveness, efficiency and ease of application. Alright, we are at the end of this training. Let's quickly recap the learnings. 1. A whistleblower is someone who alerts an organization or another authority of suspected fraud incidences. 2. A whistleblower system is a set of awareness programs and initiatives to encourage staff and other stakeholders to safely report actual or suspicious activities of fraud, corruption, or other illegal behaviors to the organization. 3. By far the greatest fraud detection method are people just like you, who see suspicious activities and report them. 4. Organizations protect staff who report suspect fraud in good faith. 5. You should not take it on yourself to investigate the fraud. Please just inform the organization of what you know so far. And finally 6. Be on the outlook in your project or area of responsibility. What is the best method for someone to know how to inform your organization about suspect fraud? Donors, governments, beneficiaries, and your organization expect such accountabilities in your management skills. Thank you for attending this training provided by the UHF team from Community Partners International. We hope you have gained good insight into whistleblower systems. By the way, according to the Report to the Nations 2020, fraud awareness training like this increases the use of an existing whistleblowing mechanisms from 37% to 56%.